And welcome to Sunday Agenda. I am Lydia Serrani. Many of you waking up to the news that Senator Lindsey Graham has passed away. And sometimes a voice becomes so familiar that you assume it'll always be there on television, on the Senate floor, behind a podium, in the middle of the biggest debates facing our nation. And then this morning, we learned that that voice will forever be silent, but his legacy leaving an indelible mark on our nation. After spending more than 3 decades in Congress, South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has died at the age of 71. Graham passed away after reportedly suffering a heart attack at his home in Washington, D.C. He had just returned from an overseas trip that included a meeting with President Zelensky. He was a fighter, a conservative problem solver, and one of the loudest voices in D.C. for a strong American defense. In his more than 3 decades in Washington, Graham played major roles in crafting key pieces of legislation affecting millions of American lives. He pushed the Save America Act, calling it a key piece of legislation while also developing a reputation as a foreign policy hawk. Graham flew overseas to war zones, to troops on the ground. He pushed for an America First policy in order to preserve our republic, preserve our stake on the world stage as the leader of the free world. He was hailed as a taxpayer hero. He fought just as hard at home, cutting, spending, and getting government out of the way of American workers. Graham represented South Carolina in the U.S. Senate from 2003 until his untimely death. Graham was the first candidate in South Carolina history to break 1 million votes. In 1994, he made history as the first Republican elected to Congress from South Carolina's 3rd district in over a century. Before politics, he served in the Air Force and Air National Guard, a military lawyer in Germany, the Gulf War, Iraq, and Afghanistan. But Graham never forgot where he came from. A very small town called Central. He lost his parents at a young age. He raised his sister. He was raised blue collar, the first in his family to go to college. Lindsey Graham will be remembered as a true American patriot. He won his primary just last month. He never married. He had no children. And now a special election will be held to fill his seat. Well, let's unpack Lindsey Graham's legacy and his tireless fight to keep America safe with U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, but not a pleasure to have to be talking about the death of a truly remarkable person and a close friend, Lindsey Graham. We were all shocked. I woke up in Israel to the news this morning, and it took me a while to even process it because Lindsey and I just communicated this past week, but I had no idea it would be the last time we would ever communicate.
And you posted a very moving tribute mentioning, again, that you just spoke to him, 71 years old. That's not old these days. And he also, he had a great sense of humor, as you mentioned, his love of Israel, as well as the Jewish people. And he passed away just hours after returning from his 10th trip now to Ukraine. What are your thoughts about his almost it felt like it was a tireless push to keep the world safe, not just America?
That's a great way to put it. I don't know if I could say it any better than you just did. You know, Lindsey's one of those people that decided early in life that he'd rather burn out than rust out. Well, he didn't rust out. He burned out, and he gave it all. I don't know of anyone who was more passionate about trying to see peace happen in the world. It's amazing to me that there are people who are so foolishly ignorant of Lindsey Graham that thought he was some kind of warmonger. That's not the case at all. But he understood that real peace comes through strength, doesn't come through weakness. He's been to Israel several times since I've been ambassador in the past year and a half. He's been here many, many times through the years. He loved Israel. He loved the fact that the U.S. and Israeli partnership had so much value for both countries and that we had so much in common in terms of our values. He will be missed here in Israel by people, not just the government officials that he knew and became endeared to. He will be missed by people on the street who knew what he stood for, how faithful he was to our partnership between the U.S. and Israel. And I can assure you there is deep mourning going on throughout the state of Israel tonight.
Right, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called him one of the great champions of the American-Israeli alliance. So talk about why the strong connection did he have, do you think, Senator Graham? Why did he have such a strong connection to Israel, sir?
A lot of it goes back to his roots, even his faith. I think that's true for many of us, and it was true for Lindsey. He understood the biblical role that Israel has played in really bringing light and law to the world. Without that, without the Judean Christian foundation, there would never have been Western civilization. And Western civilization is the foundation for the United States. So he got that. He understood that the idea of the sanctity of the individual, that we're not just part of collectives, that we get our rights not from the government but from God. He understood that, he believed it, and that was a big part of why he recognized that Israel was a unique country. It also is a country in which there is freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of religion, things that most people in this region and other countries simply don't have. And he respected that. He embraced it, and he talked about it quite often.
I have a personal almost connection to him as well, because he was one of the strong proponents for intervention, for the United States to intervene during the Kosovo War. This was a bipartisan effort. Back in the day when Democrats and Republicans worked together, he worked alongside Bill Clinton to stop a genocide. What do you think has happened to the Democrat Party? Because they no longer want to work with Republicans anymore.
And that's a real tragedy. One of the things I always admired about Lindsey, he and President Trump have one thing that's very much in common. They're both pragmatists when it comes down to solving problems. I've often said about President Trump, he looks at issues not from a horizontal perspective, left or right. He looks at it vertically, up or down. Lindsey did the same. Lindsey would ask himself, is this going to make things better, make it worse? And will it work? And like President Trump, if it would make things better and if it would work, he'd be for it, even if he partnered with Democrats to get it done. Frankly, I find that admirable. That's the way government ought to operate, not so much just from an ideological left versus the right, but an up versus the down. And we're going to miss him. We're going to miss his voice. I'll tell you something I'm going to personally miss, his outrageous sense of humor. This is a guy who could just be in a room and all the walls came down. You had a great time with him. He was funny. He was never mean. He was never that kind of person whose humor was hateful or spiteful. He was just funny. And those kind of people who could laugh at themselves, but also could just love life enough to find something humorous in it. Those are the kind of people we need a heck of a lot more of.
We certainly do. Ambassador Mike Huckabee, I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you. My honor to be with you.